Have you noticed it yet? That strange feeling when you drive through your neighborhood. Something's different, something's changed. And at first, you thought maybe it was just you. Maybe you were imagining things. But then you started seeing the posts online. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. People from every corner of America all saying the exact same thing. Does anyone else feel like their neighborhood is empty? Why are there so many dark houses on my street? Where did everyone go? You're not imagining it. Something is happening to neighborhoods across America, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Stay with me because what I'm about to show you will completely change how you see the place you live. It started with a TikTok video that went absolutely viral. A woman was driving through her suburban neighborhood at dusk, and she noticed something odd. House after house, dark. No cars in driveways. No lights on inside. No signs of life. She counted. Out of 30 houses on her street, only 7 had lights on. 7. The comments on that video exploded. Thousands of people saying, quote, 3. Someone from Ohio said they thought they were the only ones seeing it. Someone from Texas said they'd been thinking about it for months, but felt crazy bringing it up. Someone from Florida said they drive through their neighborhood at night and it feels like a ghost town. And here's the thing, these aren't cheap houses we're talking about. These are $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes in nice neighborhoods. Big houses, good school districts, the kind of places that should be filled with families, with life, with activity. But they're dark. They're silent. They're empty. So I started paying attention. I drove through different neighborhoods in my area, and I saw it. Streets that should be bustling at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. peak dinner time, when people are home from work, looked abandoned. Maybe 1 or 2 houses with cars in the driveway, maybe a couple with lights on, but the rest, nothing. At first, I thought maybe people were just out. Maybe they're at soccer practice or shopping or visiting friends. But this isn't occasional. This is consistent. Night after night, week after week. These houses are dark. And then I started noticing other things. Lawns that are getting a little overgrown, mailboxes that look like they haven't been touched in days, driveways with leaves and debris piling up, little signs that suggest these houses aren't just empty right now, they've been empty for a while. So what's going on? Where are the people? And more importantly, why is this happening in neighborhoods all across America at the exact same time? Let me tell you what's really happening, because this is where things get disturbing. Over the past few years, massive investment firms, companies like BlackRock, Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent have been buying up single-family homes by the thousands. Not hundreds, thousands. These aren't companies that want to live in these homes. They're buying them as investments, as assets, as something to hold on to while property values increase, or to rent out at inflated prices. And they're doing it on a scale we've never seen before. In some markets, institutional investors now own 20%, 30%, even 40% of the single-family rental homes. Let that sink in. Nearly half of rental homes in some cities are owned by corporations, not by individual landlords or families. And here's the sinister part. They're not buying these houses to fill them with families who need homes. They're buying them to maximize profit. If they can get more money by keeping the house vacant while waiting for property values to rise, that's what they do. If they can't find a renter willing to pay their inflated price, the house stays empty. You might be thinking, okay, but surely someone will rent these places, right? People need homes. And you'd think so. But here's the problem. These companies are charging rents that are completely disconnected from what local markets can actually afford. They'll buy a house for $400,000, and instead of renting it for what a local family can pay, maybe $2,000 a month, they want $3,500, $4,000, even $5,000 a month, because they're not thinking like a local landlord. They're thinking like a corporation trying to maximize return on investment. So the house sits empty, month after month, sometimes for a year or more. They don't care. To them, it's just a line item on a spreadsheet. But to your neighborhood, it's a dark house. It's a missing family. It's an emptiness that spreads. And it gets worse, because when investors buy up a huge chunk of homes in a neighborhood, it drives up property values, which sounds good if you already own your home, until you realize it also drives up property taxes. So now you're living in a neighborhood that's half empty, and you're paying higher taxes for the privilege. Meanwhile, young families who want to buy homes can't compete with these investment firms that are paying cash, waiving inspections and buying properties sight unseen. So those families stay renters, or they give up and move somewhere cheaper. Either way, the neighborhood gets emptier. But wait, it gets even stranger. There's another reason neighborhoods feel empty, and it's something you've probably experienced yourself. Airbnb houses. Walk through any tourist-adjacent neighborhood places near beaches, mountains, national parks, or even just trendy cities, and you'll see them. Houses that never seem to have the same people in them. Cars that change every few days. No kids playing in the yard. No neighbors to wave to. Just a revolving door of strangers who are there for a long weekend and then gone. Entire neighborhoods have been hollowed out by short-term rentals. In some cities, 15% to 20% of housing stock is now Airbnb or VRBO properties. That means 1 in every 5 houses isn't a home anymore. It's a hotel room. And here's what happens when your neighbor's house becomes a short-term rental. The soul of the neighborhood dies. There's no community anymore. There's no borrowing sugar or watching each other's kids or having block parties. There are just tourists coming and going, treating the place like a temporary stop. Not a home. It's eerie. You look out your window and see different cars every weekend. You see people you've never met unloading suitcases. You see lights on at odd hours and then darkness for days. It feels like living next to a hotel because that's essentially what it is. And the people who own these properties, half the time, they don't even live in the area. They're investors or they live in another state and hired a property management company to handle everything. They've turned housing, something that should be about shelter and community, into a passive income stream. Cities are starting to crack down on this, implementing regulations and limits on short-term rentals. But the damage is done in many neighborhoods. The community's gone. The families are gone. And what's left is a hollow shell that looks like a neighborhood but doesn't feel like one anymore. Here's another piece of the puzzle, and this one's even darker. Foreclosures and abandonments. A lot of those dark houses you're seeing, they're owned by banks now, or they're in some kind of legal limbo, or they've been abandoned by owners who couldn't keep up with the mortgage or the property taxes. You'd think in a housing crisis where people are desperate for affordable homes, foreclosed properties would get snatched up immediately. But that's not what's happening. Instead, they sit. They deteriorate. They become eyesores. Why? Because the banks that own them don't want to flood the market. If they dump too many foreclosed properties on the market at once, it drives down prices, and banks don't want that. So they trickle them out slowly, or they just hold on to them, letting them sit vacant while they figure out the best time to sell for maximum profit. Meanwhile, the neighborhood suffers. Vacant homes attract crime. They bring down property values for everyone else. They become dumping grounds for trash, havens for pests, or squatting sites. I've read stories of people living on streets where 3 or 4 houses are bank-owned and vacant. They've called code enforcement, tried to get someone to maintain the properties, but nothing happens. The grass grows waist-high. Windows get broken. The houses become blight on the community. And then there are the people who just walked away. They couldn't afford the mortgage anymore, couldn't sell the house for what they owed, so they left. Grabbed what they could and disappeared. Those houses sit in limbo, not yet foreclosed, but not occupied. Just empty. This is happening in neighborhoods that used to be thriving middle-class communities, places where people raised families and built lives. Now they're dotted with abandoned houses and an overwhelming sense of decline. But it's not just corporations and Airbnbs and foreclosures. There's also a massive demographic shift happening that's changing neighborhoods in ways we haven't fully grasped yet. Baby boomers, the largest generation in American history, are aging. Many are moving to retirement communities, to warmer climates, or into assisted living. And when they leave, their houses often sit empty for months or even years while estates get settled, while families figure out what to do with the property. At the same time, younger generations aren't replacing them at the same rate. Millennials and Gen Z are having fewer children, getting married later, and many can't afford to buy homes at all. So even when houses do come on the market, they're not getting filled with young families the way they used to. The result? Neighborhoods that were once packed with kids and families now feel quiet. Schools are seeing enrollment drops. Parks are empty. Little league teams can't fill rosters. The energy and vibrancy that comes from having young families around is just gone. And in some areas, people are leaving entirely. They're moving away from high-cost states like California, New York, and Illinois, and relocating to cheaper areas in Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and other states. This creates entire neighborhoods in those expensive states that are slowly emptying out. You see this in the data. Population declines in major cities for the first time in decades. Suburbs that grew rapidly in the 70s, 80s, and 90s now losing population. It's a reversal of a trend that's been going for generations. And when people leave, businesses follow. Grocery stores close. Restaurants shut down. The local coffee shop can't stay afloat. And that makes the neighborhood feel even more dead, even more abandoned. The pandemic changed something fundamental about where people live. Before 2020, you had to live near your job. You had to be within commuting distance. That kept people anchored to specific cities and neighborhoods. But when millions of people started working from home, that anchor disappeared. Suddenly, you could live anywhere. You didn't need to pay $3,000 a month for a tiny apartment in a city anymore. You could move to a small town, a rural area somewhere with space and lower costs. And millions of people did exactly that. They left the cities. They left the expensive suburbs. They cashed out of their high cost of living areas and moved somewhere they could actually afford a nice house with a yard. This left behind neighborhoods in those high-cost areas that are now peppered with empty houses and _5_ signs that sit for months. The people who would have bought those houses are gone. They moved to Austin or Nashville or Boise. But here's the twist. Even the places people move to are starting to feel strange. Because the people who move there are often working remotely, they're not really part of the community. They don't work locally. They don't send their kids to local schools in some cases. They're physically there, but not really integrated. So you end up with neighborhoods that look occupied cars and driveways, lights on but still feel disconnected. There's no community cohesion, because half the people are Zoom calling into jobs in other time zones, and the other half are longtime locals who feel like their town has been invaded and changed beyond recognition. So what does all of this mean for the future of American neighborhoods? What happens when communities are hollowed out by investors, Airbnbs, foreclosures, demographic shifts, and remote work? The honest answer is, we don't really know. We're in uncharted territory. But what we're seeing right now isn't sustainable. You can't have functioning communities when a third or half of the houses are dark. You can't have vibrant neighborhoods when there's no stability, no families putting down roots, no sense of shared investment in the place. Crime tends to go up in neighborhoods with lots of vacant properties. There's less natural surveillance, fewer eyes on the street. There's less community pride, less maintenance, less care. Property values can become unpredictable. In some areas, they keep rising because of scarcity and investor demand. In others, they crater because the neighborhood is dying and no one wants to live there anymore. Local governments lose tax revenue when properties sit vacant or when populations decline, which means less money for schools, infrastructure, public services, which makes the area even less attractive. It's a downward spiral. And on a human level, there's this creeping sense of unease. You feel it when you drive through your own neighborhood, and it feels like a set from a post-apocalyptic movie. You feel it when you realize you don't know your neighbors because they're either renters who just moved in or they're never there. There's a loneliness to it, a disconnection. A sense that the idea of neighborhood as a place where people know each other, look out for each other, build community together, that idea is slipping away. If you've noticed the strangeness in your neighborhood, you're not crazy. You're not imagining it. It's real, it's happening everywhere. And it's the result of converging forces that are fundamentally reshaping what American neighborhoods look like and feel like. Investment firms buying up housing stock, Airbnb hollowing out communities, foreclosures and abandonments. Demographic shifts, remote work changing where people live and how they engage with place, all of it happening at once, creating neighborhoods that look occupied but feel empty. This is one of the most important stories that isn't being told widely enough. Mainstream media talks about the housing crisis in terms of prices and affordability, which are real issues, but they're missing this piece, the piece about community dying, about neighborhoods becoming ghost towns even while the houses are still standing. If this resonated with you, if you've seen this in your own neighborhood, leave a comment below and tell me where you're from and what you're seeing. Let's document this. Let's talk about it. Because the first step to solving a problem is acknowledging it exists. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into what's really happening in America. The stuff that doesn't make the evening news, but affects all of us every single day. And look around your neighborhood tonight. Count the dark houses. Count the empty driveways. Count the signs of life. And ask yourself, where did everyone go? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.